So we're back at it here in the shop, and today we're going to show you how to fit the transom planking together for the skiff that we're building. Before I do that, I'd just like to talk to you a little bit more about the side planking here. Now, you saw us rip it by using one plank as a guide and ripping the other, and it's a pretty neat technique, and it fit together perfectly. But we decided that we would slipboard it a little bit, and that is just to get the saw texture off the edge of the boards. And we're kind of doing it on the same bench in kind of the same manner. We're using a plane, and we're using the planks that are available to us. You don't have to use any extra material. We put one plank down to guide the plane, and one plank as a spacer, and then the plank that we're trying to plane is spaced up from that guide plank a little bit by, say, 3/4 of an inch, and then we're just able to pick like a number 5 plane up and lay it on its side and just run down there kind of easily. And we're not trying to reshape the planks at all. We're just taking a little texture off. We've interchanged the planks a number of times and planed the edges that are going to mate. We didn't really have any need to plane the top or the bottom edges. And you can see the first slide down there with the plane that the piece that comes off is all full of holes and stuff, because it really isn't all the way down to the bottom of the texture that the saw leaves. Then the next little swipe across, it'll get a little bit more uniform and look like a piece of tape. We're pretty much done. A couple of swipes, saw texture's gone. All right, it's got some imperfections in it. I'll go again, one more, just for the hell of it. Nice. Like that. So now we've stacked it back up here on the bench in the order that they go onto the boat. Plank number 1 where the chine is, plank number 2 and 3. I've crowded them up against each other a little bit, and you're looking at the inside of the planking right here. I've got them outside to outside on the bench, and we're at the forward end here. I've already cut the forward end of the planks all off at the same time, and I've cut them to a particular pitch. It's 5 inches and 2 feet. I've got that from knowing what the expansion is. Now this model right here, you're looking at this thing and you see it actually in 2 dimensions, but it's 3-dimensional. It's not only got a shear line in it, but it's bent around this way. Now if I were to trace that side out, say, on a piece of cardboard and then lay it down on the bench, that would be what you call an expansion. So I have to be familiar here with these angles, not knowing what it looks like exactly on the boat, but what it has to be in the expansion. So that 5 degrees or that 5 inches and 2 feet is just something that I know from previous experience. And I've clamped a little piece of wood across there and cut it all off at once. It came out nice and smooth. I don't really have any need to touch that up with a plane or do anything. It's done. It's ready to adjoin to the stem at this point. Now we're back aft here with the planking again, and I just wanted to show you why it is that I actually stacked this planking up outboard side to outboard side. It was so that I could get a line on the inboard side of both of these planks that represents the same angle that you see right here. That's the proper angle to mount the outboard motor. Now that angle is exactly the same angle that I put on it up forward. It's 5 inches and 2 feet. So I squared it across here using one of the planking lines to hook my square onto, and then I've added the 5 inches up top at 2 feet and drawn that one line. And then what I've done is squared the 2 lines around the edges of the planking and made a mark at the bottom and put a straight edge on those 2 marks. And the idea of that is to draw that line on the other side. Now, it's got a line on both sets of planks. The transom is going to be placed just ahead of that line. I'm going to cut the planking off a little bit long here because that'll aid me to be able to spring the plank together. I could tack strips of wood across or stretch a rope across or a ratchet strap or something along those lines, and then I'll cut it off to this line when it's on the boat. Now I've removed the piece of material that we had on the bottom, and I'm going to place it on the top right on the line because my skill saw cuts about 5 inches away from that batten, and I'm actually just going to pick up the skill saw and just whip the ends of these planks right off, and they're just going to fall right on the floor. Then we're going to take the side planking and just stack it up somewhere, and we're going to move on to fitting the transom planking together. Now these are the pieces that I'm going to use right here. And I'd just like to explain some things to you about this particular lumber. Now, this was a dead tree in the woods. You can tell because it's got a lot of worm damage here under the bark. So I believe it was a dead standing tree when it was cut down. And it was quite a large log. It was long, and I believe that it was meant to be a timber in some sort of a building. But it never got cut that way, and it spent 4 or 5 years in the lumber yard. And these dead trees actually season quite a bit faster than a tree that was cut down green in the first place. And that's one of the reasons why I purchased it, because it's already partially seasoned or mostly seasoned. I had it cut exactly this way, and you can see it right here. The sapwood on this tree has already turned a very light color. And then you can see some spalting right here. That's the black. That's really the beginning stages of rot. And we're not too concerned about that because we're going to trim all of that right off. My biggest point is that I don't want this lumber to be green, because what's going to happen if it's green, it's either going to warp or it's going to shrink and end up with a big gap between the two pieces. So this lumber right here, I'm able to straighten it out and join it up with each other. And if it does shrink, it isn't going to shrink much. And that's the way we want it. So now we're going to get started processing this wood, and the first thing we're going to do is take a string and stretch it out along the edge of the wood there, right close to the line of the sapwood there, and just make sure it's not up on top of the sapwood or too far away. And some people would snap a line right there, but I'm not interested in snapping it. It doesn't come out as accurate as I'd like it to come out. I usually just take a pencil and reach under the string and make a mark, and then I let the string go and make sure that the string is hovering over the mark, and if it is, that's good enough for me right there. What I'm going to do next is measure off of those first marks about 5 inches, and that's the position where I'm going to clamp down a ripping fence. So I clamp the ripping fence down there on that second set of marks, and we're going to use that to guide the skill saw. Now, when you're cutting a rip like this, you want to make sure that that skill saw is really under control. You've got to keep it slammed right up against that fence nice and tightly, and down against your material nice and tightly. You've got to have your hands in the right position. You're going to want to make a nice rip from one end to the other, just about approximately the same speed. You don't want to go too fast or too slow. You can kind of tell how the saw wants to cut and how it's ejecting the sawdust. So we're finishing the first cut here, and actually we're going to repeat this process exactly the same on the next piece. And what we've got here now is both pieces cut on one edge. Now the edges are nice and straight. We haven't tried to fit them together yet, but they'll fit quite nicely. And what we're going to do next is pick these two pieces up and rip them on the table saw. Now we make our first rip on the table saw on the top plank, and it's ripped at 14 inches. Once that's done, we're going to set the fence on the table saw at 11 inches and then rip the bottom piece. And we've made all those cuts 90 degrees, so if I changed my mind and want to reorientate these in some way, I could do it. I didn't rip a bevel on the bottom of it the way the bottom of the skiff will have on the transom when we're done. Now, and that makes it easier for me to put bar clamps on it too and pull it together. Now, we've set it down here on the bench the way you see it. This is the bottom plank. The bottom of the boat's going to be down here. The ends are going to be cut off on an angle like that. But the first thing we wanted to do is center line the thing here somehow. And I've center lined it in between the checking on this end and the checking on that end, because this is the shortest piece of the transom. That's the longest one. And I found the center line here. It's right here, and now I'm going to take a square and square up this thing right up the middle and draw a line. And the idea of that is that this center line is going to provide me a little mark to put this little jig on there that I've made that pilots the holes that I'm going to drill down in here. I'm only going to drill down in here maybe 3/4 of an inch or so. This together. So it's very important that we at least get started exactly right, and that's what this jig is for. It doesn't really control the angle of the hole that we drill, but it does control the very position of where we start drilling.